What's up guys, it's me Jeremy. So not too long ago we made a video about playing Arena for 10 hours straight and really just trying to figure out, how much money could we make, how much could we profit after 10 hours of playing Arena. And as a lot of you guys know, Heroic Tavern Brawl was recently released and everyone's been grinding it out like crazy trying to get that 12 win dream for those awesome golden legendaries. And we decided to go for the jackpot too. So after playing Heroic Tavern Brawl for 10 hours straight, we wanted to share our results, thoughts, and kind of just enjoy the experience of playing Heroic Tavern Brawl for 10 whole hours. And if you guys enjoyed the video, definitely hit that like button and let's begin. So first off, we want to talk about our results a little bit, since of course that's what we're going to be using to calculate how much profit or loss that we actually made, as well as a lot of things that we realized about the format. So in our first run of the day, we played the most popular deck in both Tavern Brawl and on the ladder right now. Of course, it's going to be mid-range Shaman. Unfortunately though, all we kind of ended up facing was other mid-range Shamans and decks that were specifically built to beat mid-range Shaman. So despite our best efforts in our first run, we only finished with a measly 5-3, earning 6 packs, 220 dust, and 220 gold. We also decided to give Shaman another go before trying maybe a different approach, but again we kind of ended up getting the same matchups, same record actually, 5-3, and the exact same rewards. So at this point we kind of decided maybe we'd try something different, and we decided to go with some Reno Warrior, a deck that we made a video on pretty recently. And while it did actually pretty well against a lot of matchups, most of the field, the deck actually ended up being a little bit too inconsistent for this sort of format. The Reno build is actually quite inconsistent because you only play one of every single card, right? And so while it did definitely show a lot of potential, we didn't really, pull out the lucky cards, and so we earned another 5-3. And since Warrior itself wasn't actually doing that bad for us, we kind of wanted to feel things out and see how it would go, we tried some N'Zoth Control Warrior, but once again, we actually ended up finishing 5-3. So at least you can say we're consistent, I guess. I don't know exactly what to say. I mean, we did lose our first match in this run to Arcane Giant Gang at Milrogue. Not getting too lucky with the matchups so far, but 5-3 is not the worst score ever. We haven't gotten anything too bad just yet. So next up, we wanted to try Freeze Mage, which did break our streak of 5-3s, but not necessarily in a good way actually. The most popular Shaman list in the Tavern Brawl, which is the deck list by Tomflers, plays the Ragnaros Barnes sort of combo, as well as 2 charge creatures in Alakir and Argent Horse Rider, which makes that deck's matchup against Freeze Mage actually quite good. It's not bad at all actually. And as a result, we struggled a little bit, and in addition, there were also quite a lot of control warriors in the Brawl format at the time when we were playing that were trying to take advantage of the Shaman matchup, so our Freeze Mage matchup was not the ideal choice for the meta, and the run ended up finishing 4-3. Now 5-3 is actually technically making a small profit by like a really small margin. Like if you get 5-3 in this Heroic Brawl, you make about 20 to 40 gold worth of value, but we wanted to go for the big bucks, the big money. Making 40 gold on a 5-3 run's definitely not good enough for us, so we decided to go with something a little bit crazier next, and we went with Malygos Druid. So we actually had some pretty insane games with this deck, but ultimately it actually just gets a little bit wrecked too hard by Shamans, and so we ended up at yet another 5-3. I guess at least we're consistent, right? And at this point, I mean, we're still making something, so that's not too bad, I guess. It definitely could be worse, you do have to say. But at this point, it became pretty apparent to us that if we wanted to win, well, there's really just no reason not to play Shaman, which we'll maybe get to a little bit later. So we kind of decided to grind out 2 more runs as a Shaman deck. So we went 5-3 in the first run, with our losses being against other Shamans, the mirror match. And so at this point, we kind of got much better for a feel of the matchups. We were able to fit in some cool stuff, some techs and stuff, and just really mind game our opponents and get that, quality play against our opponents in the Shaman mirror match, because we had just a ton of matchup experience at this point. And so for the last run, we wanted to go full on try hard, do our absolute best, and we managed to squeeze it out at the very end, getting a 12 win run, going 12-2, getting 1100 gold, 1110 dust, 50 packs, and a golden Riousx, Fandral, and Scenarios, because oh man, that's just awesome. So how much did we actually profit, or at least make, at the end of our 10 hours. So in the 10 hours, we managed to make a total of 8 runs, which totals up to 8,000 gold in terms of the actual entry value. So out of these runs, our total rewards were 2,610 gold, 2,620 dust, and 91 packs. So if we convert the dust and gold to their approximate gold values on average, it's definitely fair to say that 1 pack equals 100 gold. Now, it's not necessarily fair to say that 1 pack equals 100 gold, which also 100 gold equals 100 dust on average, but I guess in the long run, the average amount of dust that you get from packs is actually close to 100, but that does factor in gold and legendaries, so in the short term, you're never going to get 100 dust from packs on average. But anyway, that's the conversion we're going with. 1 pack is equal to 100 gold, and 100 gold is equal to 100 dust, and with that, we get a total sum of 14,330 gold worth of value. So if we take 14,330, take away the entry fee of 8,000, we end up at a total profit of 6,330 gold worth of value. And that's actually quite awesome for 10 hours worth of work, actually. 6,330 gold is enough to buy 63 more packs. It's enough to buy 42 arena entries potentially. Now, obviously, not all the rewards were in gold, so you couldn't buy arena entries with them, but it's a little bit tricky, to be honest, because when it comes to Heroic Tavern Brawl, it definitely is like a rich get richer sort of scenario, because the thing is that like in order to get the amount of wins that we did, we needed to already own pretty much all of the cards, right? Like we couldn't have made those decks that got us the wins that we did if we didn't already have the cards. We didn't already have some good constructed decks, enough, gold for the entry, and enough like skill and luck as well. But that said, though, to be honest, even though the profit is not that useful for us because of the situation that we were in to be able to make that amount in the first place, it was still actually quite insane. I mean, if you consider the fact that you make maybe around 400 gold worth of value from a 12-win arena run, there's no way you're going to be able to make 6,000 gold worth of value from arena in 10 hours. That's just literally impossible. So overall, it turns out that Heroic Brawl was actually fantastic for us. We made a ton of stuff, and it worked out quite well. And honestly, if you consider, we didn't actually even have like that amazing results. We had a bunch of 5-3s. That's definitely nothing impressive. We did have our super 12-win run, which was enough to give us that crazy amounts of value, though. It definitely pulled the weight and just carried everything pretty much, to be honest. But despite the poor runs before it, and despite a lot of the initial community concern that Heroic Tavern Brawl was just not going to be worth it, it actually ended up being quite good for us. Really solid. And sure, it's true, a lot of the more casual players who played Heroic Tavern Brawl probably did lose some gold or some money. But to be fair, it's not like anyone was forced to play it or didn't really know what they were expecting going into it. And Blizzard even put like a warning on the box when you pay the entry and just made it very obvious that it was like a big deal. It's not, a small entry fee by any means. And it's not easy to get 12 wins by any means either. But I mean, going 5-3 seemed to be pretty easy considering the fact that we just did it so consistently. And not only was it a great way to earn some value for players who were prepared to play against all the mid-range shamans, or maybe you just figured out a good deck to play against mid-range shaman, but it was honestly like a really awesome way for like streamers and content creators to get this awesome new game mode. A lot of streamers got like crazy viewer numbers throughout the week, and honestly, it was just a lot of fun to watch as well if you didn't even play it yourself. So let's talk a little bit around the strategy behind the Tavern Brawl, or at least the strategy that we kind of went with, I guess you could say. So first of all, it seemed pretty clear that Tom Fleur's Shaman list was the optimal list to bring to the Brawl at the end of the day. A lot of people were saying at the start, oh, if too many people are playing Shaman, everyone's just going to play decks that beat Shaman, and then maybe you can get away with playing decks that beat the deck that plays Shaman. The problem with that, though, is that mid-range Shaman is a lot like how the old pre-nerf combo Druid used to be. Sure, some decks definitely have better matchups against mid-range Shaman than others do, but there's not really like a perfect counter for the deck. Additionally, if you kind of just practice and learn a lot of the ins and the outs of the bad matchups for the deck, like Freeze Mage, Control Warrior, Reno Lock, it can definitely be enough to grind out some wins and win some games that you might not necessarily have any business winning against people who don't know the matchup against your deck quite as well as you do. So the Heroic Tavern Brawl is unfortunately pretty short-lived, and I really hope we can get this video out in time, but unfortunately it's looking like maybe we can't. I mean, we did our best. We definitely wanted to make this video as fast as possible, but it did take a lot of effort behind the scenes. So if you see this video when there's still time to do some runs, or maybe if it comes back before the next expansion launches, really hope it comes back. It probably will come back in the future. I mean, I think it was pretty successful for the most part. We would definitely recommend playing that Shaman list if it comes back before the next expansion. It's probably unlikely, but I mean, if you get the chance, who knows. However, it's definitely likely to come back after the next expansion for sure, so we can definitely take a look at it then when it comes around. And throughout the week, what other cool decks did we get to take a look at? So we saw some really awesome heavy control priests, as well as some really interesting, control druids actually, with things like Starfall, Double Ancient of War, and both of those lists were, definitely trying to take advantage of the mid-range Shaman matchup. Unfortunately, both of these lists did actually still lose quite a bit to Shaman, since the Shaman deck is actually very consistent. It's very resilient as well. And it doesn't really have, too many bad matchups, but those priests, those, control decks that are very teched heavily to beat Shaman tend to suffer when they play against decks that just aren't Shaman. Now, Mill Rogue was actually a very interesting list that we saw as well, and while it was definitely a great matchup against a lot of the control decks, Mill Rogue was a great deck to bring if you wanted to beat the decks that were intended to be designed to beat mid-range Shaman, if that makes sense. But unfortunately, Mill Rogue does not do so great against Shaman itself. Most of the Shaman openers are just way too fast for Mill Rogue to be able to have a chance, not to even mention the even faster decks like Face Hunter or Zoo. We also saw quite a lot of Beast Druid as well, which was a pretty interesting choice, since that deck can honestly kind of just beat anything if it draws well enough. But it does also have some medium to bad matchups across the board, so it can suffer in that sense. And we decided that if we wanted to shoot for a high amount of wins, it was just a little bit too inconsistent for us. But if you kind of wanted to, play an easier deck this Brawl, or maybe like a face deck, or just something that's, not too difficult to play, Beast Druid's probably what we would have recommended. Now, we saw a surprisingly small amount of Zoo decks, but with all the Freeze Mage, the control decks, and even some of the Shaman decks too, to be honest, Zoo actually does have pretty terrible matchups across the board, actually, at least in the meta of this Heroic Brawl. But overall, it was really interesting to see how the meta of the Brawl was a lot different from the, typical ladder meta. And while the formats being different did cause a shift in the metagame and some different card choices and stuff, mid-range Shaman was definitely still the king. Still though, Heroic Tavern Brawl was a ton of fun, we made a ton of profit, and even though one deck ended up being a lot better than most of the others, which is probably something that will tend to happen in a one deck format where you happen to just lock in your deck, this is something that we would absolutely love to see come back again soon, and I'm definitely excited to get a chance to play it in future expansions or just, sometime in the future. So how did you guys do in Heroic Tavern Brawl? Definitely let us know in the comments section below. Either way though, looks like that's going to be it for me. If you guys enjoyed the video, drop a like, subscribe if you want. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.